We know that our body utilizes glucose to produce energy. But have you ever thought why only glucose is utilized and not amino acids or fatty acids? If amino acids and fatty acids cannot be utilized to produce energy, then how does the body obtain the energy trapped in these molecules? Let's find out the answer in this video session. When carbohydrates are digested, glucose is formed. And the glucose directly enters the cellular respiration pathway to release energy. It is because the enzymes involved in cellular respiration can work on glucose or the related components formed during the process of cellular respiration. Now, we know that fatty acids and amino acids have energy trapped in them. They have to enter the respiratory pathway to release the trapped energy. So, would they enter the respiratory pathway at the first step? No, they do not enter the respiratory pathway at the first step. Let's see the case of fats molecule first. During digestion, fat molecules are broken down into fatty acids and glycerols. For fatty acids to release energy, they have to degrade into acetyl coenzyme A and enter into the respiratory pathway or the Krebs cycle. So, do glycerol and glucose molecule also degrade into acetyl coenzyme A? The answer is no. Glycerol and glucose molecule have to be converted into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Here, you can note that acetyl coenzyme A is a substrate for the Krebs cycle and PGAL, that is phosphoglycerate, is an intermediate compound in the process of glycolysis. Then, what is the entry point for proteins? Again, we know that during digestion, the proteins are digested into amino acids by protease. The individual amino acid, based on their structure, enter the respiratory pathway as pyruvate or acetyl coenzyme A or as any other intermediate compounds of Krebs cycle. Let's understand the flowchart shown. Fats get digested into fatty acids and glycerol. They enter the Krebs cycle by forming acetyl coenzyme A. In case of proteins, proteins get digested into amino acid and enters the respiratory cycle in the form of pyruvate acid. Now we have understood that during cellular respiration, the different substrates are broken down to release energy. Hence, the process from its earlier times is considered as a catabolic process. Here the question is, what is a catabolic process? Catabolic process is the part of metabolic process where substrates are broken down into two or more products. But can we justify respiration as a catabolic process? We can to an extent, but not wholly. Let's again take the case of fatty acids. In this, the fatty acids is broken down into acetyl coenzyme A, which enters the Krebs cycle. What if the body requires fatty acids? These acetyl coenzyme A formed will have to get withdrawn back to produce fatty acids. So, what is happening here when the acetyl coenzyme A is getting changed to fatty acids again? Formation of substrate, correct? And this is an anabolic pathway. Anabolic pathway is just opposite to catabolic pathway. It goes the same with the proteins. The respiratory intermediates help in the protein formation. Because the process of respiration involves both catabolism and anabolism, we cannot just attribute the term catabolic pathway to respiration. Here, we use the term amphibolic pathway for respiration instead of catabolic pathway. Now that we have understood that respiration is an amphibolic pathway, we will next understand what is respiratory quotient. We know that during respiration, oxygen is consumed and carbon dioxide is released. The ratio of the volume of carbon dioxide evolved to the volume of oxygen consumed during respiration is known as respiratory quotient or respiratory ratio. And this is represented as RQ. So, on what factors does the respiratory quotient depend? The respiratory quotient depends on the substrate used during respiration. When carbohydrate is used during respiration, the volume of carbon dioxide evolved and the oxygen consumed is equal. Hence, the RQ will be 1. As you can see here, 6 carbon dioxide released uses 6 oxygen molecules. In the case of fats, the amount of carbon dioxide evolved is lesser than the oxygen utilized. So, what will be the RQ? Yes, the RQ will be less than 1. Here, for example, tripalmitin, when get digested, 102 molecules of carbon dioxide is evolved and 145 molecules of oxygen is used, giving an RQ of 0.7. In the case of protein 2, the carbon dioxide evolved is less than that of oxygen consumed. Hence, the RQ of protein will be around 0.9. Living organism prefers substrate that have RQ 1 or more than 1. Now can you say why fats and proteins are not favored as respiratory substrate? We have seen that plants do not have any special organs for breathing, but have a similar mechanism for cellular respiration as that of animals. In case of animals, we know that they utilize more of energy produced in locomotion. But there is no locomotion in plants. Then what happens to the energy produced during the process of respiration in plants? Where is the energy utilized? Try to find them out. Let's now summarize what we have learned.
Manorama Horizon. Learning made simple.